What if I told you the little slab in your pocket didn't just change how we talk, it rewrote what talking even means? Welcome to Unboxd Origins. I'm Howie, your resident science geek and accidental trivia sponge.
And I'm Wyatt. I ask the big questions. Sometimes philosophical, often skeptical, always curious.
Today, we're digging into how did the smartphone change communication forever? Picture the telecommunications timeline like a relay race. The baton started as the telegraph's dots and dashes, then sprinted through Alexander Graham Bell's telephone, hitched a ride on radio waves, and limped into the clunky but revolutionary mobile phones of the 1980s. But the real acceleration began when computing squeezed into handheld form. The first handsets were about voice. Martin Cooper of Motorola, making that famous 1973 call, was saying, in effect, we can cut the cord. Those early radios and Dynatac bricks made speech portable, but they were still just a portable pipe for voice. The shift toward what we now call a smartphone began when people started thinking about melding computing, messaging, and networked services into one device. That's where the IBM Simon matters. First demonstrated in 1992 and sold in 1994, it was clunky, had a touch screen, and offered apps like a notepad and fax. Most folks forget Simon because it looked nothing like our sleek rectangles, but it introduced the idea phones could become personal digital assistants, not just phones. For the 1990s and early 2000s, a series of engineering and cultural developments stacked up like building blocks. BlackBerry taught us that email could be mobile and speedy. Flip phones popularized compact, pocket-friendly designs. Nokia gave sturdy, long-lasting devices and early mobile internet experiences with WAP, while Palm and Windows CE brought styluses and personal organization tools into the pocket. Technically, the spread of GSM networks and packet data upgrades like GPRS and Edge, and later 3G, turned the mobile phone into a data conduit, not just a voice pipe. By the time Apple launched the iPhone in 2007, there was a network infrastructure ready to carry more than calls, web pages, photos, maps, and eventually apps. The iPhone's capacitive multi-touch and a browser that behaved like the desktop web changed user expectations overnight. People stopped tolerating miniaturized versions of desktop interfaces. They wanted direct manipulation, tap, pinch, swipe, and that expectation rewired software design everywhere. Then came the platform wars and the app explosion. Apple's App Store in 2008, Android's open ecosystem soon after, and the flood of venture capital reoriented an entire economy around mobile software. Suddenly, developers had a global distribution channel in everyone's pocket. Messaging evolved. SMS had been around since 1992, but apps like WhatsApp, 2009, WeChat, 2011, and iMessage 2011 reimagined what a message could be: persistent threads, read receipts, groups, and stickers. Some of these services, for example WhatsApp and iMessage, later introduced end-to-end encryption for messages. Others, like WeChat, do not provide end-to-end encryption. Cameras and sensors improved too, turning phones into tiny studios and data collectors. GPS and mapping apps transformed logistics and introduced location-based messaging. Push notifications made communication asynchronous but immediate. You could be informed without being engaged until you chose to be. Altogether, the smartphone stitched together phone calls, email, web, camera, and location into a single continuous stream. That stream changed habits. People texted instead of calling, posted images instead of describing them, and used real-time maps to coordinate meetups. Communication stopped being linear. It became layered, multimodal, and always on.
Aha! Here's the twist most histories gloss over. We tend to describe the smartphone as a better telephone or a pocket computer. But what it truly did was change the grammar of presence. Before smartphones, being in touch meant a phone call, a visit, or a letter. Interactions had natural breaks, a context, a body. The smartphone turned presence into a distributed, persistent state. You can be present in 20 conversations at once, ghost someone with a read receipt, and curate a version of your day for hundreds of viewers with a single tap. That change in presence altered not only our social etiquette, but our language, our sense of privacy, and our expectations of immediacy. Emojis, GIFs, and short videos didn't just decorate messages. They created new syntaxes for emotion and context that verbal language struggled to capture. In short, the phone didn't only change how we communicate, it redefined what communication itself is.
And with that redefinition came consequences, some delightful, some disorienting, some downright dangerous. On the delightful side, community building at scale. Smartphones enabled new movements of solidarity and coordination. Think citizen journalism during the Arab Spring, or how a bystander's video can instantly hold institutions accountable. They made art, microfilms, and global live streaming accessible to people who would never have reached audiences before. On the practical side, GPS plus mobile equals Uber, Waze, and delivery acts that remapped local economies. On the darker side, the always-on stream feeds an attention economy. Platforms designed for engagement, notifications, infinite scroll, and algorithmic feeds exploit psychological triggers to keep eyes glued to screens. That attention is monetized. Your communications are valuable data points, metadata, patterns of who you text and when, location trails. All these are a new currency for advertisers, data brokers, and sometimes governments. Edward Snowden's 2013 revelations only pushed into the public eye what had been quietly happening for years. Communication data isn't neutral. It's harvested. There's also the seismic shift in how we relate to truth and time. News cycles used to be driven by printing presses, scheduled broadcasts, and gatekeepers. Smartphones spread publishing power to the edges. That's democratizing and chaotic at once. Eyewitness videos, viral tweets, and on-the-spot updates accelerate awareness, but also accelerate misinformation. Deepfakes and coordinated disinformation campaigns ride the same distribution channels that let us share cat videos. Furthermore, the smartphone turned micro-coordination and ephemeral messaging into political tools. Groups can organize rapidly, but they can also be misled quickly. Another overlooked effect is language evolution. Memes and emojis are shorthand cultural references that compress complex ideas into instantly shareable packets. Language acquired an iconography and a speed previously unimagined, reshaping rhetoric in elections, advertising, and personal life.
And there's another aha. The smartphone democratized not just publishing, but identity molding. You no longer needed a studio or a press run to present yourself to the world. A teenager with a good idea and a camera can become a cultural force. A mechanic can build a brand with short clips. That empowerment altered social hierarchy. Cultural influence decoupled from institutional power in important ways. Yet that same flattening can intensify performance pressure. People curate identities for audiences, leading to what sociologists call context collapse, treating multiple social spheres as one continuous stage. The device turned private moments into potential public content, which shifts behavior, sometimes subtly, sometimes dangerously.
Technically speaking, the smartphone also rewired infrastructure. Voice used to be the dominant protocol for mobile networks. Data demands pushed carriers to upgrade from 2G through 3G to 4G and now 5G. That cascade fueled investments in fiber, edge computing, and content delivery networks intended to keep latency low and streams smooth. App ecosystems grew into multi-billion-dollar economies. Developer tools, SDKs, app analytics, payment systems, in-app purchases, creating new industries and dismantling old ones. Retail and banking adapted fast. Mobile payments and QR codes restructured commerce in ways payment terminals alone couldn't. For public health and accessibility, smartphones opened huge possibilities. Telemedicine, remote monitoring, screen readers, voice assistants. Suddenly, medical advice and assistive tech could ride in everyone's pocket. In many parts of the developing world, smartphones leapfrogged wired infrastructure, making services available without legacies of landlines or large-scale broadband. But let's be honest, it wasn't a clean revolution. Design trade-offs, battery life, privacy, unfair platform control became political debates. Platform gatekeeping, app store fees, and the tension between closed and open ecosystems shaped who benefits. Opaque algorithms decided what content gets amplified. Regulations lagged. We're still dealing with the consequences. Data breaches, addiction-style design, and debates over whether location tracking should be allowed for public good versus personal privacy. The smartphone's ability to mediate virtually every form of communication means its architecture becomes an architecture of power. The way notifications are prioritized, the defaults for data sharing, the affordances apps provide. A seemingly small default setting can have outsized social consequences.
So why does any of this matter beyond the fancy tech demos and viral memes? Because communication is how societies coordinate, argue, love, and learn. The smartphone changed not just the speed of coordination, but its texture. We moved from spatially bound interactions to omnipresent, multimodal conversations. That shift rebalances social norms. What counts as intrusion? What forgiveness looks like when a hurt moment is recorded and shared. Even how children learn language and attention. It altered power dynamics. Journalists, activists, and whistleblowers gained tools, but so did advertisers and autocrats. And crucially, it teaches us something about technology. Small design choices ripple into culture. A nudge toward infinite scroll. A setting to default on location sharing. An icon that encourages one-tap sharing. These are not neutral. They sculpt how human communication evolves.
At the end of the day, the smartphone is a mirror and a stage. It reflects our social needs to connect, to be seen, to coordinate, and it stages those needs in new ways. It accelerated globalization, compressed attention, democratized publishing, and amplified emotion into tiny, high-bandwidth packets. It created an economy of apps, rewired infrastructure, and introduced new ethical landscapes around privacy and truth. But perhaps its biggest legacy is more subtle. It transformed being in touch from an occasional exchange into a persistent field of social presence. We carry the potential to be reached, to share, to witness, and to be witnessed, and that changes how we structure our days, our politics, and our relationships.
So what do we do with that knowledge? We can choose to be informed designers of our attention and guardians of our privacy, encouraging defaults that respect both. We can demand better regulation and more transparent platforms. And on the individual level, we can cultivate practices that reclaim boundaries, turning off notifications, scheduling phone-free time, teaching the next generation about consent in a recording-capable world. The smartphone didn't just alter technology, it altered human practice. Understanding that lets us steer its consequences.
In short, the smartphone didn't simply make communication faster or prettier, it reinvented the category of communication itself, packing voice, text, images, location, and data into an always-on social instrument. That instrument has reshaped economies, politics, and everyday life in ways we're still unpacking.
And remembering that helps us ask better questions. Not just, what can this device do? But how should we let it change how we live together? When technology redefines presence, it redefines responsibility.
If you like this deep dive into the gadget that lives in your pocket, hit like, subscribe, and share with someone who still texts with all caps.
So, did the smartphone merely improve our ability to talk? Or did it rewrite the grammar of being with one another? The question remains in your pocket.